Our next story is about a number, 315 trillion. This number has great significance for the global economy. 315 trillion is the combined value of all the loans in the world, the total global debt. This is money borrowed by governments, households and businesses. All of it put together is $315 trillion. Needless to say, it's massive. Let's put this number in context for you. What is the size of the global GDP? A little over $109 trillion. What is global GDP? If the global economy was a giant shop, the global GDP would be the value of all the goods and services produced and sold in the shop. It is the total value of every product or service sold in the world. That is the global GDP. As of today, it's worth $109 trillion. And what is the debt? $315 trillion. So the world's total loans are almost 3 times the global GDP. What does that mean? We owe a lot more than we earn. Now let's tell you who owes how much. Starting with household debt, the value of all your home loans and credit card balances, education loans and the rest. Together, they're worth over $59 trillion. Then we have business debt. That's around $164 trillion. Finally, government debt, which is worth $91.4 trillion. Now, whichever way you look at it, these numbers are too high. This kind of debt is unsustainable. Last month, the chief of the World Economic Forum drew attention to this. In an exclusive conversation with Firstpost, he said, global debt levels have not been this bad since the Napoleonic Wars. What sort of risk do you think this unsustainable debt poses to the global economy?
It's a risk also for the banks. We saw in the big financial crisis that solid banks is very important. But we will need in the coming decade to really work on how to reduce unsustainable debt. Interest rates has now become the largest budget cost in many developing countries. And this is very worrisome.
So there is cause for concern. Let me tell you why. When the global debt pile is large, there's a higher risk of large-scale defaults. And this can be fatal for the economy at every level. Some of you may remember the 2008 financial meltdown. It was triggered by a large number of mortgage defaults. 6 million American households lost their homes to foreclosures. Basically, they could not keep up with their loans. So they defaulted. And this led to multiple bank failures, finally a great recession. In 2022, we saw another collapse, this time in Sri Lanka. Colombo owed more than $46 billion. 52% of this debt was owed to China. Sri Lanka could not take the burden anymore. It defaulted on its debt. Sri Lanka had to be bailed out by the International Monetary Fund or the IMF. So whether it's a country, a company or an individual, a default is an unpleasant situation. Although it affects everyone differently. Countries can find ways to secure financing, they can find new lenders, they can also issue bonds to raise money from investors. They can even get bailouts. Even businesses can find ways to get out of debt. In 2008, America bailed out its entire banking sector. The package was worth $700 billion. When a bailout is not an option, companies sell equity to raise cash. They can also be bought out by investors. In the worst case scenario, companies do shut shop if they go bankrupt. But like I said, this is the worst case scenario. But for individuals, the consequences are far more severe. A default or a bankruptcy can uproot households. Families lose their hard-earned savings. Sometimes individuals are pushed to extremes like depression or even suicide. So households are the most vulnerable of the lot. And in the days ahead, their debt troubles may worsen. Experts say there is a $700 billion black hole. A $700 billion black hole in the global economy. They're calling it phantom debt. But these loans are being overlooked. Where do these loans come from? The buy now, pay later platforms, better known as BNPL, buy now, pay later. They give out easy loans to users. Their USP is flexibility. You can repay the loan as per your convenience, but these loans come with a catch. In many cases, These platforms charge a high interest rate. So for individuals, these loans can become a debt trap. But despite the risks, more and more people are turning to these BNPL platforms for loans, especially in India. Look at some numbers. In 2022, the Indian market for BNPL loans was valued at around $3 billion. $3 billion in 2022. By 2026, it could be worth at least $40 billion. This is a massive surge from 3 to 40. It will contribute to the global debt burden too. So it's time for economists and governments to pay attention to this, to find ways to reduce the world's large debt pile.
South Africa's May 29th elections.
It was the start of change in the country.
We are on the verge of history.
I am standing here at the forefront of change where voices echo the call for action. The nation grapples with an unemployment crisis. As South Africans prepare to cast their votes, the question looms, will the winds of change usher in a new era, or will the legacy of the past maintain its grip on the future?